Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais with another episode of the Yakking Show, the Harmony Channel. This is your path to wholeness. But first, let's introduce co-host Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you so much for that. And we thank you so much for tuning in to our show. We so appreciate having you. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. We are very privileged to welcome Richard Strother to our show today. Welcome, Richard. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Kathleen.
Now, Richard, he refers to himself as the widower's wingman. So he helps widowers rebuild relationships following the death of a spouse. So let's jump right in, Richard. Tell us a bit about your personal story and why you decided to make this your career.
So I started out my career in graphics, and I quickly got bored with the idea that because the technology always follows the same rules. So I got into the psychology of how people get motivated, how people learn, how people, how graphics can be more effective, more influential, and I really started getting more and more into relationship with information, relationship with technology, and that led me to become a trainer at Apple for over 8 years, and and for a couple of years after that, I coached people on healthy and effective use of technology. So really making your technology work for you instead of you working for your technology. And in 2018, I lost my wife Samantha, and we'd been together 20 years.
Oh.
Now, it was not an unexpected thing. It was something that we kind of knew was coming. It was a matter of, it was a long stint. She had a rare form of cancer, and she was under treatment for that for 9 years. But you could see where it was going and whatnot. So it was not it was not a shock. It was not a surprise, but it's still a blow. And because I'd been through that, I was talking with a friend, and I was like, the technology thing is great, but I think I could be, more helpful. And we kind of had this great conversation, which led to an epiphany. And that led to there was wingman, and I was like, wait a minute, I've been, understand kind of where the mindset needs to be and kind of how to get there, and the technology and psychology behind the site, getting that closure that you need to be able to do it well. So that became the widower's wingman.
Oh,
That is interesting. Yeah. Well, condolences certainly on losing your wife, and I guess even though you said it's not a shock, when it happens, I think it is still a shock. Surely, even if you're expecting it, it must be. You use the term blow. I can imagine it's
always
a hard one. Yeah, must be. So my question for you, and this is partly from personal observation, but I want your opinion. Do you think widows are more reluctant than widows to get back into engaging socially and starting to look for a new relationship?
And that is such a great question, because there's widows tend to become more social and tend to look for support among friends, among family, and they will look for support groups and whatnot. Men kind of take the opposite approach. I find that there's not a lot of resources out there for men. There are more than there were, but there's not quite as many. And I do have to give a shout out to Fred Colby and Herb Knoll for their excellent books, Widower to Widower and The Widower's Journey, because they are wonderful, wonderful guides to kind of, the process after. And I highly recommend those. But what men tend to be more kind of objective based. So they're like, oh, my life is wrong, gotta fix it. Right. And this is not something where you haul out the duct tape and, okay, we're going to patch that up. So men don't tend to get as social as much as they try to find or to fill that void. A lot of men jump out and try and, find a relationship to fill that void, and that never works out well. So it's a very interesting prospect, and we can talk a little more about kind of socializing and identity and all of that, because that is the biggest key to, getting back out there properly.
Interesting. Yeah.
So can you explain to us, Richard, exactly how you go about helping people?
So the biggest thing about look, dating went all completely online even before pandemic, right? It was, and it's funny because there's so much stigma around the dating sites. Like, wait, you're on a dating site? Yeah, there's a crazy amount of stigma around it. But let's be honest, when we want a plumber or an electrician, we go to the yellow pages. There's no stigma there. You go on Google, you find somebody. There's no stigma. But we still have this kind of, well, if you want single people, go where the single people are, and that's where the single people are. It's the ultimate directory. But just like those books, they're not going to tell you what you need. And that's the catch. It's most people couldn't tell you what a good relationship looks like, let alone kind of like they can tell you what they don't want. They'll give you the long list, the laundry list of things they don't want, but they can't tell you what they do want. So that's part of helping out. It's making sure that people know what they've got, integrate their past. Like that chapter of your life informs who you've become now. So we have to integrate that. We have to take that and, you have to acknowledge who you are, find your identity, find your place now, and start looking from a place of, I know where I'm at, I know what I have to offer, and I want to share my life with somebody. So let's get out there and let's make you, it's kind of a marketing thing, to be honest. It's very much like business. It's a marketing thing. You have to get out there and you have to say, here I am. And this is, your brand is why people would want to go out with you. Advertising is how you ask for the date. Marketing is why they'd want to go out with you, kind of thing. It's a matter of, you have to kind of know where you're at, be comfortable in yourself, and then get out there and know what you're looking for, and then make yourself appealing, be the beacon for those people who would meet with you.
Okay. So you mentioned that many men just sort of dive straight in and go about it the wrong way, and women tend to be more social. But I think for both men and women, there's still quite a lot of trepidation about getting back into looking for or trying to establish a new relationship. So what's the biggest single problem? Is it a fear problem, or is it a confidence problem?
Confidence is definitely a huge part of it. I think the biggest challenge is women don't identify singularly, right? Most women are not just a mom or just their job or just we don't use the word just. Women have a lot of kind of pillars of identity, but men, let's be honest, men tend to, I am my children's father, I am my wife's husband, and what I do for a living. Losing a job can be a major life crisis for a man.
I'm sure.
Because we have so fewer pillars of identity holding us up. So once you lose your spouse, you lose half your identity. And you not only have to mourn the person who lost, you have to mourn and come to terms with the life unlived, the expectations that cannot be because of that. And then it's a matter of, okay, so what is your identity? What is your purpose? Who are you and what are you bringing? And that's where all of this kind of comes together. It's really kind of getting back to who you are, what roles you're playing, and what roles you're choosing to play, because this is about intentionality. Right? You're not getting out there because you want to fill something, to fill a hole. You're trying to get out there because now I know I'm worth being, like that's where the confidence comes in. I am good. I am worth being with, and I need a partner who will love me as I am. And that authenticity is something I'm very much about.
Sure. I know exactly. Well, I have a really good idea of what you're talking about, the difference between men and women. I grew up for 4 months, and my dad, his whole life was shattered. Okay, he was worried about her. And then he was killed. And yet my mother got over that much better than I expected her to. And I thought afterwards, if the situation had been reversed, if she'd been killed and he'd survived, he would have had a far more difficult time getting on with his life than she did. She went on to live another over 30 years on her own. So that to me was a glaring example of how women seem to cope with these tragedies much better in many ways than men do.
I find that women tend to be more experiential. They don't tend to look at the object or the objective as much as they look at that within the scenario, right? And
right.
The great example I can give is a water bottle. You put a water bottle in the middle of a kitchen counter. You ask a man, what do you see? I see a water bottle. The woman's looking at the kitchen over the course of the day, the next day, the next few days. how the kitchen is used, and why is that there?
Right.
There's nothing wrong with it. Why is it there? And so it's a difference of perspective in that way.
Sure.
And I think that women seek their tribe too. They'll go, okay, I'm going to seek support. Whereas men, we have been told all our lives, no, you have to be strong, you have to be tough, you have to be, but we're not using the right words. We say strong, we say don't show weakness, don't show vulnerability. That's not strength. And that's the difference. And yes. I think that's where redefining masculinity has to come in, where we have strength is something in here, and you have to be you and be comfortable in your own skin to be able to go out into the world and be confident and say, yes, this is my life, and I'm worth, and this is worth living. And so I think that's a big part of it.
Sure. No, very good. Yeah, that is good.
So once you've managed to help somebody finally get out there and they're dating, how do you advise them to avoid comparing a new partner to their deceased spouse? How do you do that?
That's actually before we even touch a dating site. That's kind of the preamble. And the thing that I mentioned to people, and I think is so important, is you really have to look at your past and who have you become? What has that relationship made you? How do you honor the person you were with by embodying the best of them? Right? Integrate that. That's part of your story. And there's no denying it. There's no getting around it. And it's a matter of, that once you realize that that's part of you, and that no relationship will ever be that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Then you can go out and start looking, and you're not looking for them. You're looking for what's right for you, the you now, the you that you've become, even through all of this. And that's the biggest trick. So there's no comparison at that stage, because it's not about comparing. It's about, I had a life before. This is a new chapter. This is a new, and I acknowledge the life before, but that is past. I am better for it, or I hope you're better for it anyway. I am better for it. And now we move forward, because what was good there may not be good now, or what is good now may not have worked then. So that's really my key to that.
Yeah, that's good. And you're quite right. I mean, for someone who's been married to one person for 20, 30 years, and that the partner dies, the survivor is a totally different person to that which he or she was when they were young and got together, right? As you say, whole life's gone by, so everything is different. Yeah. So Richard, the three common questions that I guess most men ask is, how long should I, if they lose their wife, how long should I wait? And am I ready? And is it too soon? Because society sometimes says it's too soon, right? So how do you advise people to address those questions?
There's a common piece of advice, which is after a loss, you should wait a year before making any major life changes. Make only the changes you must. There's a good neuroscience, there's neuroscience behind this that says don't make major changes. And the reason is because a lot of people, you're going to have upsets. Like this is a huge upset, no matter, even if you guys weren't getting along well, even if things were awful, you still have to redefine yourself almost entirely. There's so much that's up in the air that you need to keep as much stability as you absolutely can. So that's one of the biggest things I would say. And the year is just a guide point, but it is a good one. And from neuroscience, we know that a year is really good. That's when you kind of start going, okay, I have at least enough of a foundation where I know it's not shaky. It's not, I know kind of where things are. And some people it takes longer. Some people could be a little shorter. That's fine. I fully acknowledge that. But I think the year is a good gauge. And I did wait the year before I started dating again. And I see all the things that had to change in my life. So that was big, and I was thankful for that. And then it's a matter of, is it too soon? An unplanted seed doesn't grow. You have to, but the trick is I don't want people just running out and going, yeah, I'm going to join a dating site. They're going to do it all for me, and I'm going to wind up with a great relationship, because they're not going to know what a good relationship is for you. The Yellow Pages doesn't tell you what to look for. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really kind of a huge thing of saying, okay, I need to know. You'll know when you're ready by knowing that it's like, I know what I want. And if you're not clear on what you want, well, that's what I help a lot of people with. And if people just want to talk to me, I'm open to that. Like I'm not just about, I'm not all about the money kind of thing. I'm out to help people, and it's so I really do want to see where people are at. And if I'm not the right person, I will help them get to the right resources for more.
So when you say don't make major changes, would you advise people not to suddenly sell the house that they shared with their spouse, go out and buy a red sports car, go on a world cruise, or move to another city? Those sort of major changes you're talking about.
That don't lend money, don't start a new business within the first year, or make major changes to your business without having somebody you really trust, who has your best interests at heart, or the business best interests at heart, to make sure that those decisions are not coming purely from an emotional place or from a place of hurt, or so yes, it's really truly important that you don't run out and change jobs. It's like, okay, I'm going to change everything and move city, because out of the frying pan into the fire, and by the time you kind of get your bearings, you realize that you're infinitely worse off, or worse, like a lot of men do, because men, we need companionship, we crave companionship, let's be honest, but we go out, and some men get into a new relationship right away, and all of a sudden that person is out to take them for a ride, not
sure.
necessarily explicitly, but
it happens, yeah. But I sorry, Kathleen, I'm going to just ask Richard one more on this one. But the other side of that coin is again, not to be too reclusive, right? So sure, you shouldn't jump into the dating game straight away, but you should also not shut yourself away from your normal circle of friends and other social contacts, which some men do, right? They go into hibernation and feel that's the way to cope, and that's not healthy either, is it?
Thank you, Peter. And you're absolutely right. It is actually probably the worst thing you can possibly do. The one thing I will say for your audience, for those of you who are listening or watching, who not, even if you haven't lost, if you know somebody who has, because we all know somebody who has, goodness sakes, go get them out of the house. Find something that you can do together. Get them out. Broaden their world. Get them out for supper. Make sure that they're not holding up and becoming a hermit, because that really is the worst thing that you can possibly do. Even for introverts, I know they may not want to for as long, but getting out is good for introverts too. So
no, good one.
So Richard, what advice would you have for younger widowers that have children that they need to introduce to a new relationship? That can be very stressful on all parties, really.
It absolutely can. But think about it the other way too. Health conditions, some kind of or medical conditions, disability, children. There's all kinds of things we're insecure about. And the problem with a lot of what our society tells us, again, that thing with men, don't show weakness or don't show vulnerability. We have to get away from that. We have to kind of start looking and trusting each other and going, you know what? It's okay if I have children, because there are people out there who want to start a family who maybe can't. So there are some men who have children, and there are women who want to have children who can't, who that would be very appealing, because they want that family value, that, diabetes, for example, is a big one that I've seen quite a bit. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to stop a relationship in its tracks. It just has to be managed or considered. But it's not a red flag by any far stretch. But if we're open and honest, if we have a strategy to say, this is the scenario, this is part of who I am, love me, love my dogs, right? Well, that's kind of, you see that in dating circles, or love me, love my pets. Well, love me, love my children, love me, love me as I am. So I think it all kind of comes down to be open, be honest, just put it out there. Because if you're with somebody and you have children and they don't have that, they're not family oriented in their values,
Mhm.
that's not going to work out very well for either of you.
So how do you explain to the children though that you're wanting to date? How do you handle that?
I think one of the most important parts of that is to be, again, open and honest. Um, the biggest thing with that is, and I say this a lot, the foundations of any good relationship: heard, respected, and valued. So with children, they need to know that it's not a replacement or competition for them. That if you're searching a relationship, it's because you need another adult around, you need a friend or a companion or somebody with whom you can, you can share life. And it's important for the partner to say to understand that the children have had a certain relationship, and that there cannot be competition there. That if you're going to have a relationship with the person, you're going to have a relationship with their children. Make it a good one.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of the approach is really be very honest about, daddy wants to meet friends. Daddy needs time with adults. And that's not to say I don't want to be with you, especially, make sure that, dad is present for the kids, and that this is in addition to that. It's that is sharing a life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also to reassure the children that the new stepmother is not in any way replacing their mother, or better than their mother, or more desirable than their mother, because that comes up quite a bit as well, doesn't it? That yeah.
Absolutely. You're absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah,
Quite a minefield,
yeah. And
to walk
especially
through.
if they then go on to have other children with a new spouse. And I mean that could build resentment with the current children and from the previous relationship.
I
It's
think that also goes with heard, respected, and valued. If they feel heard and respected and valued, then I think that the discussion needs to be had. It's not that the other children will determine whether you do or do not have children, but that it is not a, well, guess what, surprise, and you have to deal with it. This is something we're thinking of expanding our family. We want we want to have more children together. This would mean more brothers and sisters for you, or more brother, sister, whatever it is. This is something we'd like to do, and we want your help. We want you to be part of it. And that inclusiveness, I think, would make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. So here's one that I hadn't thought of before, but just listening to you talk, I would think is quite important. We've seen how divided society gets over things like COVID, things like vaccinations, things like politics, and it seems to be so much worse in the last few years than it was, certainly that I remember growing up. So if you're now looking to start a new relationship, would you advise men to get that out of the way right up front, so that it doesn't rear its ugly head later? So, I mean, I'm quite conservative. So if I just know that should I need to, I would not form a good relationship with a very liberal woman, right? It's just not going to happen. So what's the point wasting time going down that road? So what's your advice there? Do you need to get those contentious issues dealt with? Some people can handle it, let's be honest, some can't. But do you need to do that right up front?
I would say that part of the kind of preparation process of saying, I am comfortable with who I am, this is who I am, and especially having a really well done dating bio that says, this is what I'm looking for, this is who I am, talk to me about, is really important. In that, if this is something that you put forward views that I don't want to find somebody who's going to be antagonistic. I'm open to debate. I love debate.
Sure.
But some people don't, and that's fair. But I think the idea of putting yourself out there and attracting the right people to you, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. If you're open about it up front, then you're not going to attract the people that are going to be incompatible anyway. Okay, so Richard, aversion. We ask all our business guests my burning question. It's slightly changed for you. Is there a type of man, we're talking men particularly here, or is there a characteristic or a mindset or habit that men who do move on and build second successful relationships after the loss of a spouse. Is there one of those, or is it a lot more complicated than that?
It's actually remarkably simple. And I'll kind of put the question back to you. How many times have you heard what made you successful at your business? And it's, I had a vision, I had a purpose,
Right.
I have something towards which I am moving. And I think that's the case here too. It's a matter of nobody will lose weight, and nobody will lose weight unless they want to.
Sure.
Unless they understand it, unless that is something that really moves them. The same is true with any habit. Same is true with business success. Same is true with relationships. Unless you value that relationship and really want it, and you're willing to move towards it, you're willing to invest time, energy, yes, maybe some money, but more time and energy, and attention, be present. But even before the relationship, it's, what is my purpose? What gets me up in the morning? What am I driving towards? And that alone is the moving forward part. It's enormous, because those who don't have purpose, who just kind of live in the past and, it was great, why can't it be again? You're not moving anywhere. You're not going forward.
Right. Right.
Yeah, very true. No, well, good answer. Thank you for that. That's great.
Thank you for the question. It was a great question.
So, Richard, how do people contact you?
The easiest way to get me is at my website, thewidowerswingman.com.
All right. Excellent.
And you can find media, you can find my YouTube channel, you can find everything through the website. You can contact me directly, free calls, all of that.
Okay, so I've got to thank you for that. I got to ask you, when you use the term wingman, were you in the Air Force or a pilot or something, or? I
was not actually. You know what? If we have a couple of seconds, I'll tell you a funny story about that. I didn't want coach, because coach isn't quite correct, right? Wingman is more interactive. It's somebody who's really got your back.
Yep.
And at one point, I was talking with my brother, and he was like, no, you need something that's less kind of Italian version of consigliere. We were laughing about that for a week, but honestly, like all the other words just didn't seem to fit. The wingman is because it really is not just about the advice. It's not a consultant. It's not it's support. It's somebody who has your back and has that objective viewpoint.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. No, I think it's really good. I just wondered if it was a pilot to force connection that brought that up. No, but good story.
Oh, thank you.
Well, that's it.
Good Top Gun reference.
Well, thanks, Richard. There. Back to Kathleen to wind the show up.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there you
go. So, Richard, thank you so much for being with us today. We really enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully you help a lot of widowers out there that can use your help. And thank you also very much for tuning into our show. If anyone is interested in being a guest on our show, please visit us at theyakkingshow.com. All you need to do is click on the Contacts tab, where you will find a short application form, and we would love to hear from you. So until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.